good day. We are here in Algebra covering PO50, which is still factoring trinomials. The only difference between PO50 and 49 is that now our trinomials are going to have an A term, which is a coefficient to x squared other than 1, which actually kind of makes a huge difference in the process that we use to factor them. In PO49, the reason why all of your parentheses started with an x and you really only had to focus on what numbers went in there is because all your trinomials that you were factoring started with x squared, which you get from just multiplying x times x, okay? But as soon as you add a coefficient other than 1, things get tricky because not only does that coefficient involve, the numbers that go before the x in your parentheses, but it also is affected by the constants that you put in, okay? So keeping all of that in mind, we are going to run through the steps several times, how to factor a trinomial in ax squared plus bx plus c form. So this form, ax squared plus bx plus c, you'll get used to seeing because it's the standard form of a parabola, right? We have slope-intercept form that we've talked about. That's the standard form for a line. This ax squared plus bx plus c is the standard form for a parabola, which we'll get to graphing in PO54. But first, factoring. Step number 1, we're going to factor out the greatest common factor of the numbers in the trinomial. So the greatest common factor of 12, 38, we can ignore that sign there, and 20. What is the greatest common factor of 12, 38, and 20? Quick review on greatest common factor. It's going to be the largest number that is a factor of all three of them. So it is 2, okay? And when we say factor out that greatest common factor, it means that we're dividing each term by 2. Okay, kind of the reverse distributive property, similar to what we did in CO47. So 12x squared divided by 2 gives us 6x squared. Negative 38 divided by 2 is a negative 19x. And 20 divided by 2 is a positive 10. Okay? And you can make sure that you've done this correctly by distributing that 2 back in, multiplying 2 by 6x squared, negative 19x by 10, and you'll get your original expression. And really the only reason why we do step 1 is to make steps 2 and 3 a little bit easier because it makes our numbers inside of our parentheses smaller. So in step 2, we're multiplying the a and the c term, which is why it's important to know that ax squared plus bx plus c, your a term is your coefficient to x squared, which is now 6, right? It's not 12 anymore, it's now 6. We factor that 2 out. And the c term, our constant, is 10. So we're multiplying 6 and 10 together, and that gets us 60. Okay? And step 3 is really what you did in PO49. We're looking for 2 numbers that multiply to make 60, which is what we got from step 2, right? And those same 2 numbers add or subtract to get our middle term, which is negative 19. So you run through the factor pairs of 60, 1 and 60, 2 and 30, 3 and 20, 5 and 12, 4 and 15, 6 and 10. Which one of those pairs can also be used to add or subtract to get negative 19? Josh, how? What signs do they all need? Right. So negative 4 and a negative 15 multiply to get us positive 60, and negative 4 plus negative 15 give us negative 19. Follow me so far? Good? Okay. So step 4 is where we start to set this up. And this is the format that you use here. Our greatest common factor, that 2 that we pulled out in step 1, goes out in front, and then we make our two sets of parentheses here. Now, both sets of parentheses get that ax term, which is the 6x in 6x squared minus 19x plus 10. So both sets of parentheses get that 6x term. Okay. Then, looking at the numbers that we used in step 3 to make this whole thing work, one of them gets the -4, one of them gets the -15. Doesn't matter which. Okay? Yeah. No, we don't include the squared here because at the very end, when we check our answer with FOIL, crab claw, or the box, this 12x squared is going to come from multiplying those two x terms. So just like in PO49, when you put the x in your parentheses, it was just x. The x squared comes from multiplying them. So number 5, simplify both sets of parentheses. What I mean by simplifying is take out the greatest common factor of, in our first set, 6 and 4. How can we simplify 6 and 4? What's the greatest common factor? Yeah. Yes. Of just 6 and 4. 2. So we're going to divide our first set of parentheses by 2, which is going to give us 3x and -2. Right? 6 divided by 2 is 3. -4 divided by 2 is -2. And then what can we simplify our second set by? What's the greatest common factor of 6 and 15? 3. So divide by 3, divide by 3, and we get 2x and -5. Step 6 now, we go back to that greatest common factor, and we distribute that back in to only the first set of parentheses. So we're going to distribute the 2 back in, and that gives us 6x minus 4 times 2x minus 5. And if you're thinking, well, wait a minute, we had 6x minus 4 already. Why did we divide by 2 only to multiply by 2 again? Well, your greatest common factor won't always be 2. You won't always be dividing by 2 in that first set, so it just happened to work out that way, that we divided by 2 only to multiply the 2 back in. So it's just a coincidence. Brent?
I had the 6x squared minus 15 before the minus 4, and I got a different one. Would that be okay?
We'll come back to that. Okay? So, this being our final answer now, we can use FOIL, crab claw, or box to check it. Kind of going back to Audrey's point earlier, the reason why we don't include this x squared part here is that when we multiply 6x and 2x, 6x times 2x gets us our 12x squared that we originally have. So our coefficients are correct so far. When we multiply our constants, -4 times -5, we get positive 20, which is what we originally had. So far, so good there. But where you really got to pay close attention here is with your inside, outside of FOIL. We've got -8x here, -30x here, which combine to give us -38x in our original expression. So all is good. Okay. Now Brent said he got something different because he had his parentheses over here flipped. He put the 6x minus 15 first. Brent, what did you get? Final answer.
7x squared minus 38x.
7. So does your step...
I added 12x.
For your final answer, down here, you got 12x squared?
I had 12x squared minus 38x plus 20.
Right, but how about this step here, where you have your 2 before you checked it?
4x minus 10, 3x minus 10.
Okay, 4x minus 10, 3x minus 2. And he got that because he put his 6x minus 15 first before the 6x minus 4. That's okay, because when we multiply this, 4x times 3x is 12x squared. Negative 10 times negative 2 is positive 20. Negative 30x, negative 8x still combine to give us negative 38x. So again, just goes to show that it doesn't matter what order those parentheses are in, as long as your numbers are correct. Okay, which means that there are multiple ways to factor this, right? Just like if I ask you for the factor pairs of 20, you can say, oh, 2 and 10, 4 and 5. There are multiple ways to factor it. Same thing here. There's more than one set of binomials that multiply to get 12x squared minus 38x plus 20. Okay, that's a lot of steps. I don't expect you to have them memorized, but if you can follow along and say, okay, I know how we got the 60. I know how we got the negative 4 and negative 15, and I understand this and that. If you can kind of follow the steps, that's a good spot to be in after seeing one of them. Okay? Are there any questions? Who feels like their life is better than it was when they walked in at 11:05 today? Every hand is in the air. Fantastic. Very good. All right. Let's look at some to do together here. The steps are not written out, but we'll follow them. So step 1, which is factor out that greatest common factor. What is the greatest common factor of 6, 16, and 6, the three numbers in our trinomial? Every hand's in the air again. I can only call on one of you, though. Lauren. Not 3. 3 does not go into 16. It is 2 again. Okay? So the greatest common factor being 2, we're going to take that out, and we're going to be dividing each term by 2. 6x squared divided by 2 is 3x squared. 16x divided by 2 is 8x. And negative 6 divided by 2 is negative 3. And again, the only reason why we factor out that greatest common factor is to make steps 2 and 3 a little bit easier, make our numbers smaller. And you'll definitely see the value of that when we get to the second page and work with some numbers that are fairly large here. So step 2, we're multiplying a and the c together, which looking at the trinomial in our parentheses, our a term is 3, our c term is negative 3, and the product of those is negative 9. So we're looking for two numbers that multiply to make negative 9, and those same two numbers add or subtract to equal what? 8, our middle term. Elise? 9 and negative 1. 9 times negative 1 is a negative 9. 9 plus negative 1, which is saying there's 9 minus 1, is a positive 8. Okay? Questions on steps 1 through 3? 2 and 3 being kind of that combo. Okay, so step 4, we're going to set this up. 2 is our greatest common factor, so that goes out in front. And then our sets of parentheses, both of them get that ax term, which is 3x. One of them gets the positive 9, and the other one gets the negative 1. Step 5 is where we simplify. How do I simplify that first set of parentheses, 3 and 9? What can I divide them by? Daniel? 3 again. So divided by 3, divided by 3. How about that second set? Can I do anything there? No, and that'll happen, okay? Where you can only simplify one set. And so 3x divided by 3 is x. 9 divided by 3 is 3. And then our second set is just 3x minus 1. Step 6, distribute that coefficient back into our first set of parentheses only. And that gives us 2x plus 6, and then times 3x minus 1. And we can FOIL, crab claw, box this. We can see that 2x times 3x is 6x squared. Our constants, 6 times -1, -6. And then our inside-outside, this is 18x. This is -2x. And 18x minus 2x is a positive 16x. It checks out. If you did it the other way, where you put your -1 in the first set and your positive 9 in the second set, you'll get a slightly different answer. But if you FOIL, crab claw, box it, you'll see you'll get the same end result. Okay? Any questions on this? Okay, let's do the next one. 15x squared plus x minus 2 equals 0. Step 1, factor out that greatest common factor. What's the greatest common factor of 15? 1, right? This coefficient of, there's 1 and 2. Gabby? 1, which means, does that really help us to divide everything by 1 here and pull out a 1? No. So we can actually skip this GCF step. I really like when this happens because it also means we can skip step 6 where we have to distribute it back in at the end, because if there's no GCF to distribute, we don't have to do it. So skipping step 1 when that works out that way just makes this better. Step 2, multiply A and C together, which is 15 times -2, and that gives us -30. So step 3 now, two numbers that multiply to make -30. Those same two numbers add or subtract to be 1. That middle term, which there's no number written, means it's a 1. What's our combination here? Factors of 30 that add or subtract to be positive 1. Alex? Positive, negative? -5. Positive 6, -5. 6 plus -5 equals 1. Okay. Step 4, setting this up. Again, there is no GCF, so we can go straight to our parentheses here. Both of them get the A term, which is 15x. One of them gets the positive 6. The other one gets the -5. Now we simplify. 15 and 6 can each be divided by 3. Our second set, 15 and 5, can each be divided by 5. So that leaves us with 5x plus 2 and 3x minus 1. Foil, crab claw, box it. You'll see we get the same result as we originally started with. All right. How are we doing? Even if you're not sure how to ask a question, if you have it, just like what step is giving you trouble? If you're not quite sure how to ask, if you're like, I don't get step 4 or step 2 or whatever. Is there any step that is giving you issues? Bridget.
So basically, you're just trying to get back to the starting.
Right. You're essentially saying what binomial times what binomial equals my original expression. Just like if I asked you for the factor pairs of 50, you know, what you come up with, 5 times 10, should multiply to equal the original term. Right? It's kind of doing the same thing here, only with a much more complicated term than 50. Okay, but that's essentially, yes, you are correct. So I mean, why didn't we do a GCF? Because the only number that goes into 15, 1, and 2 is 1. And dividing each term by 1 doesn't change them. So there's no real point in doing it. Where we're headed with this, if you're wondering the why and who cares about factoring here, remember I said that this standard form, ax plus bx plus c, is the standard form for a parabola. Factoring that gives us information about the parabola, namely its x-intercepts. From this factored form, we can rather easily figure out where that parabola is going to cross the x-axis, which when it comes to parabolas is a very kind of critical thing to know. Okay, so that's where we're headed. But first, we got to get this skill down first before we can get to that. All right. I would like you to. How many are on the next page? 6 of them.
And then the page is six.
Let's have you work on 3 of them in the next 20 minutes or so, and then we can go over any that you might come across as problems. So 3 of the 6, your choice. We'll end the recording here. That's how you math.